Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a book unhaul. I'm very excited to be doing this, and I was inspired to do this because me and Hayden found a new place for the next year. We are moving, and since we're moving, I don't want to have a bunch of boxes of big, heavy ass books that I don't want to move. I just did a little bit of culling of my shelves. I already had about like 10 books set aside that I knew that I didn't want to keep, but I added to that pile, and I think I have about 21 books here that I want to get rid of, and I'm gonna let you guys know why I want to get rid of them. I also would love it if you guys could tell me in the comments down below if any of these books are your favorites and if I should keep them, and whatever book with the most support behind it, I'm going to try to keep it and read it and talk about it at the end of the month. So without further ado, let's talk about some of these books. The first book that I'm getting rid of is my newest book, one of my newest books, and it's The Devouring Grey by Christine Lan Herman. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars. I will be continuing on with the series, but I just felt no need to keep this. This is not a book that I'm actually going to be rereading. The plot was simple enough to where I'm honestly probably going to remember enough about it to read the second book, and I think I'll just pick the second book up from my library because this is not a favorite series of mine as much as I enjoyed this first book. I would way rather donate this or sell this and have someone else discover it. It was okay, but it was just not something that I feel like I'm going to reread. And my standard and my benchmark for most of the books that I keep now is, am I going to reread this? Is this something that I really need in my collection? Or is this just a book that I read and it was like, okay, good. And this was just kind of okay, good. Another book that's kind of a new release, kind of controversial, Curse the Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. After I read this, I immediately put this in my unhaul pile. I gave this book 2 stars. It wasn't terrible. It just was not a favorite of mine. I felt like the characters were a little lackluster, the plot was nothing original, and honestly, I think ACOTAR is a better book than this. So I like the representation, and I like that so many people are drawn to it because of the representation. Like, I think that's really awesome. But just the story itself to me wasn't enough to like warrant keeping the book. I may or may not pick up the sequel. If I do, it'll be for my public library because why just keep something that I'm like just indifferent about, you know? Okay, so this next book I actually hauled pretty recently, so I feel kind of weird about getting rid of it, but the author's pretty problematic and I have no desire to read this now knowing that, because I know that he's like slightly transphobic and I think maybe like racist. I'm not really sure. I just heard bad things and I don't want to read this author's work. It's The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. We're gonna get rid of this. The next book I'm getting rid of is like my own stupid fault. I don't know how often this happens to you guys, but sometimes I will buy something used on Amazon hoping to get one edition and then I get the edition that I don't want. This is Vampire Academy by Michelle Mead. I already have this paperback edition. I was hoping to get this in like a library bound hardback, but apparently even the library editions of this book are paperback. You cannot find this book in hardback anywhere, I don't think. So I got this. It was like $8. I was too lazy to return it, so I'm just gonna donate it. I'm stupid. We know this. Yes, I'm getting rid of this. I already have my own like well-loved copy. The next book I'm getting rid of is a book that I tried to read this year. I got about, I don't know, 40 pages into it, and I just knew that the characters, the setting, everything about it just wasn't gonna do it for me, and that is Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa, which I'm kind of worried about because we're actually reading one of Julie Kagawa's books, The Immortal Rules, I believe, for the May edition of the Trashback Book Club, but I'm hoping that book's better than this because I just did not enjoy this. It read very juvenile to me. I just felt no instant like attachment to anything in the world, and my friend who had read about 200 pages, we buddy read it together, she didn't like it either, so I just felt I would cut my losses and DNF it, which I don't think I've ever honestly DNF'd a physical copy of a book before that I own personally. This was the first time that I've ever done it, and I think I'm gonna have to start doing it more often. Why waste my time on books that I don't like when I could be reading things that are amazing? There's too many books, you know what I mean? The next book I'm not gonna talk about much because like, who gives a shit? It's The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I feel like everybody was hyping this because it had a really interesting premise. It has a really pretty dust jacket that I do still have, but I just don't have on the book right now. I'm never gonna read this. Everybody's given this 2 or 3 stars. I'm not intrigued about the sequel. Just keeping it because it has a pretty cover. We're not doing that in 2019, you know, we're gonna get rid of this. And this was another kind of recent purchase for me. It is Archangel's Kiss by Nalini Singh. This is the second book in the Guild Hunters series. I bought the second and third books in paperback. I still have the third one. I'm working through it right now. I like having them in the mass market style, but I don't keep mass market paperbacks once I've read them just because they take up too much room on my shelves. They're not pretty. There's no dust jacket to take off of these, so it's like I could keep it, but I'm probably not going to reread it, and if I do, I can just check it out from my library, and I've been listening to these primarily on audiobook anyway, so like, why keep it? Next book I'm getting rid of, it's not actually a book, it is a graphic novel, and it is Lumberjanes by, I don't know, a bunch of different authors. That's pretty lazy. This was good. This was very cute. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. I enjoyed it, but I have not picked up the subsequent issues, and I am not someone that likes to really keep a lot of graphic novels, so I'd rather this go to someone who would actually like really enjoy it. I liked the art style, I liked the rep in this, but other than that, that, I'm just like, it was just like an okay read for me. Next 2 books I'm getting rid of have been on my shelf for I think 2 years now, and it is A Crown of Wishes and The Star-Touched Queen by Roshni Chokshi. I'm very conflicted here because I have The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi and I haven't picked it up. I mean, I have picked it up, I got 50 pages in and was very confused and have not really wanted to read it since. I'm holding on to that one in hopes that one day, like, I'll pick it up and just be really excited about it, but that day is not today. And so I'm kind of like, should I keep her backlist novels that I'm not even that interested in when I couldn't get through The Gilded Wolves? I don't think so. If you guys really enjoy this book, like I said, let me know in the comments down below, but I just don't know about these. Bit of a controversial pick here, folks. I am going to be getting rid of the entire Darker Shade of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. I feel really almost guilty about this. I also feel guilty about like asking for these for Christmas. I think I asked for these too. I read A Darker Shade of Magic and I tried to read The Gathering of Shadows, I think is the second one. I just couldn't get through it. I am not the biggest fan of this series. It's fun and I enjoyed the first book when I read it, but upon further inspection of V.E. Schwab's works and having read pretty much, I think, all of her series now. Fuck, that's wild. You know, I've read The Savage Song, I've read this series, I've read Vicious. All of her characters kind of follow along in the same vein. She's got a Hufflepuff male character and a Slytherin female, and that's pretty much their defining characteristics. So I just don't tend to love her books, and I was holding on to these because they're beautiful and I thought one day I'll get to these, one day I'll be interested. I just don't think that's going to happen. And I never see these at my used bookstore, and I'm sure that someone else would really like to read these because I don't want to. Okay, this next book, I don't know how to feel about this. This is Rebel of the Sands by Alman Hamilton. This is, I believe, some sort of like Middle Eastern, Arabian sort of story, but the author's white. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she's white. And I also heard this is kind of boring. So it's like, do I want to support a non-own voices tale when we've got stuff like We Hunt the Flame coming out? Or do I want to just keep this on my shelf in hopes that I'm going to eventually read it? Because I'm not gonna read this. I'm just not. Unless you guys tell me it's kick-ass and like I should, but the representation here is like iffy for me, and I just haven't heard very many things about this, like good or bad, so why keep it around? The next book I'm getting rid of isn't really a big deal. It's The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. I heard this series is a really cool kind of like Greek-inspired fantasy series, and I don't even actually think it's necessarily that fantastical. I think it's kind of more of like a historical fiction type story, but I tried to read this and I was bored to tears. It read very old, and I believe this was written in the 90s. Let me double check for you. Yeah, this was written in 1996, and the series is still going, I believe. I think the last book either just came out or it's going to come out, and that's fine and good, but this just reads like it was written a long time ago, and I don't love that, if I'm being real. It's not written in an old-fashioned way. It's just, YA has come so far since 1996, and I feel like this is just so cut and dry. There's not a lot of characterization from what I could tell. There's just not a lot of stuff going on. It's a very short book. I'm just not that thrilled about it, and if I do eventually want to read this, I'll probably pick it up on audiobook like I have been for most fantasies, so I'm getting rid of this. My second to last most controversial picks, I'm sure you guys saw in the thumbnail, I'm getting rid of all of the books in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Here's the thing. I read up until Empire of Storms. I didn't get through Empire of Storms. I think I was about halfway through it. I don't hate Sarah J. Maas. I'm just gonna be real with you. I don't think she's the best writer in the world, but I think she does a really good job at characterization. I think she makes you really fall for her characters, and there's something really unique about that. I think there's a reason people like her books, but unfortunately, I'm not going to read these in physical versions. Even after I got the physical, like hardback versions of these, just to have them on my shelves to be pretty, I still read them on my phone because I could get through them much quicker, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. Like, I get through books just so quickly on my phone, and the pages of these is like vellum. Also, let me just be real. Let me tell you a secret. I know that I have hardback books. I know that I love hardback books, but hardback books are not that fun to read. So it's like, if it's a big clunky one, I'm definitely just gonna read it on my phone. And like, I just don't need these. And I'm just undecided too on whether or not I ever will finish the whole series. I think that's what I've been most on the fence about. It's like, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of effort. Don't know that I want to put in. And then last, but certainly not least, my arguably most controversial pick, I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you guys watched my wrap up or my live show with Dylan, you know that I did not like this book. I gave it 3 stars. It's probably more of a 2-star if I'm just being honest in terms of like my feelings on the book and not just if it was objectively good. 2 stars for me. I didn't enjoy it. I thought that Evelyn was irritating. I didn't like the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid tried to give us these moral absolutisms in her writing. I just didn't like it. I did not enjoy this book at all. And I know that a lot of other people would love to find this in their local used bookstore. And I don't know, hopefully it'll take them places it didn't take me. So that is it. Those are the 21 books that I'm going to be unhauling. Like I said, in the comments down below, please let me know if you've read any of these books that I have not read, and let me know if I should read and keep any of these books, because like I said, I want to read it before the month is over and maybe do it in my May wrap up, the book that you guys say I should read. If that made any fucking sense. I think Lala has done this, so. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. I love you all, and until next time.